Welcome to another episode of Late Nights with Lenin, where we bring you Lenin. And you might wonder, why would I want to know what some dude in Russia had to say who's been dead for nearly 100 years? Well, for that, we have to blame capitalism. Sadly, a lot has changed, but nothing has fundamentally changed. And a lot of problems he deals with, a lot of problems you're dealing with, he's already dealt with. So each week, I'm going to read a piece. For the first 2 weeks, we're making a little bit of an exception. If you have boomer parents, just tell them that we are reading the Georgian saint Yosif Vasirovich Jugashvili.
Yes.
And everyone else knows it's Stalin. His work on dialectical and historical materialism. This is the foundation of what it is to be Marxist, is that your way of understanding the world is through the method of dialectical and historical materialism. And if you start understanding the world through this method, eventually it'll always lead you to Marxism. Because that's generally where the truth leads to, as Michael Prent. What did Michael Prenti say?
I don't know.
Something like that. The truth is Marxist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you have like any form of communism goes back to Marxism too. Anyway, you know what I mean? So,
yeah. And the only reason it's called Marxism and not dialectical materialism is they kind of don't want to defame its elders of proto-concept science stuff. Okay.
So was the term dialectical materialism really wasn't it like somewhere later, like after Marx, that it kind of was used? Like they didn't really call it that. They called it what?
No, they did. Engels did.
Engels called it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So as we figured from last week, what Marx did is he took a grain of Hegel's methodology of dialecticism and then applied it to the study of material society, as in things we can see, touch, that exist outside of our head. And so with that, shall I begin reading historical materialism, which is just
Part 3.
And this is important for Americans, very important. Afterwards, we'll show that meme about how to fool a liberal. This is because liberals don't have historical materialism.
Yes.
Okay. And feel free to interrupt me anytime, Janet, to ask a comment or... Okay. Now... Sorry. It now remains to elucidate the following question. What, from the viewpoint of historical materialism, is meant by the conditions of material life of society, which in the final analysis determine the physiognomy of society, its ideas, its views, its political institutions? What does physiognomy mean?
So it's like, you know what? I actually do know what it is. Physiognomy. I did actually know this, but so physiognomy is something to do with like a person's facial features or expression. So it's like,
so what is the physiognomy of society?
He's probably trying to say like the face of society, or the general. All right. So a general form or appearance of something.
The general form and appearance of society is what he's trying to say.
Yeah. Yes.
So. And I'm sorry. So I didn't understand this question. So what is this? Okay. I just want to make sure it's
So what from the viewpoint of historical materialism is meant by the conditions of material life of society?
Okay. So what should be understood from the viewpoint ultimately which determine what a society looks like, its ideas, its views, and its institutions is what the extra notes say. Okay.
Yeah.
What, after all, are these conditions of material life of society? What are their distinguishing features? So I guess let's try with two societies. You do America and I'll do another country. How about that?
Okay, like what it looks like?
What are the distinguishing features of, let's say,
America? Like American society. Well, I mean,
okay, fine. Do Boston. We'll shrink it.
I'll just do okay. So Boston. Well, I don't know. Like it's the feature. Because I'm
India. I can say that it's never quiet.
But it's like how it. So it's like how it looks, right? How it.
Oh yeah, with India, I can say it's like there's always noise. It's never quiet. It's always like active.
Yeah, I mean it's busy. It is and then because we're like New England, so we have like certain times of the year that it's like busier than it is other times of the year. So you can have a quiet in the winter and stuff like that. So in all reality, Boston it does kind of change like anyone that's in a season thing. So it's like anything that like comes in from it. So like where it's on the sea, so fishing. So we do a lot of like how we eat, like what we eat is, exactly. It's not fish based, but we have a lot of farms. So we have, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like the way that we live, the way that we live here.
There can be no doubt that the concept conditions of material life of society includes, first of all, nature, which surrounds society. Like you said, the sea or the mountains or whatever. Geographical environment, which is one of the indispensable and constant conditions of material life of society, which of course influences the development of society, like you mentioned with the fish. Mm-hmm. What role does the geographical environment play in the development of society? Is the geographical environment the chief force determining the physiognomy of the society? Is the character of the social system of man the transition from one system to another, or isn't it? Historical materialism answers this question in the negative. Geographic environment is unquestionably one of the constant and indispensable conditions in the development of society. And of course, it influences the development of society. It accelerates or slows down its development, but its influence is not the determining influence. Yeah. The difference is between a influence and the determining influence. In as much as the changes in development of society proceed at an incomparably fast rate than the changes in development of geographical environment, obviously. In the space of 3,000 years, three different social systems have been superseded in Europe: the primitive communal system, the slave system, the feudal system. In the Eastern part of Europe and in the USSR, four social systems have been superseded. Yet during the period, geographical conditions in Europe have not changed at all, or have changed so slightly that geography takes no note of them. And that is quite natural. Changes in the geographical environment of any importance requires millions of years, whereas a few hundred or a couple of thousand years is enough for even very important changes in the system of human society.
So this is like, there was something that I was reading, and it was like basically like all right, so Darwin even kind of had it wrong, because Darwin was saying like if you read Darwin, like evolution's constant, like it's constantly going. So there's constantly,
and then it jumps a few leaps.
But it's not that. It is. There's always a leap. So there is constant, like nothing's ever the same. Like step in the same river, the same, like
you're never stepping the same thing twice.
Different. You look at a baby picture of yourself, you're not that person anymore. You're this person. You know what I mean? So like things don't remain the same, but there's things like the geographical that may not play as big of a part as other factors in it.
Well, with geography too, like continental drift, like sometimes like it goes like this and boom, suddenly India crashes into Asia.
Yeah, there's a big to do at a certain point. I mean, Pompeii would have had.
Exactly.
So like, so like, even in the geographical, I guess you would have like this kind of like skipping forward, like a big leap forward.
Great leap forward.
Yeah.
It follows that this geographical environment cannot be the chief cause, the determining cause of social development. For that which remains almost unchanged in the course of tens of thousands of years cannot be the chief causes development of that which undergoes fundamental changes in the course of few hundred years. Further, there can be no doubt that the concept conditions of material life of society also includes growth of population, density of population of one degree or another, for people are an essential element of the conditions of material life. And without a definite minimum number of people, there can be no material life of society. Is growth of population the chief force that determines the character of social system of man, or isn't it? Stalin says, "Niet." Historical materialism answers this question too in the negative. Of course, the growth of population does influence the development of society, does facilitate or retard the development of society, but it cannot be the chief force of development of society. Its influence on the development of society cannot be the determining influence because by itself, the growth of population does not furnish the clue to the question why a given social system is replaced precisely by such and such a new system and not another. Okay. Why the primitive communal system is succeeded precisely by the slave system, and the slave system by the feudal system, and by the feudal system by the bourgeoisie system, and not some other. If population growth were the determining force of social development, then a higher density of population would be bound to give rise to a correspondingly higher social system. Okay, this example is outdated. He's sorry, China.
Yeah.
Sorry, USA. This example. Okay, back then, yes. But this shows you how fast China has grown. But we do not find this to be the case. The density of the population in China is 4 times as great as in the USA, yet the USA stands higher in China in the scale of social development. Sorry, Americans. Things have switched. For in China, a semi-feudal system still prevailed back in 1938, and then they had a giant leap forward.
Yes, they did.
Whereas USA has long ago reached the highest stage of development of capitalism and then started declining, I guess, or is this higher stages of capitalism? I don't know.
We're kind of in the death throes of capitalism.
Yeah. So I don't know whether it's a decline. Okay. The population of Belgium is 19 times as great as USA, but 26 times as great as USSR. Yet USA stands higher than Belgium in the social scales of development. And as for the USSR, Belgium lags a whole historical epoch behind this country. For in Belgium, the capitalist system prevails, whereas the USSR has already done away with capitalism and has set up a social system. Okay.
So just also like I think a note to help. I mean, most people listening to this probably understand this, but like one of the things, like as Esha's saying this, is that they're like Marx had the belief of, the next stage is going to be socialism or communism. Like we're going to go from capitalism. We talked about those stages, like we had 3 or 4 stages.
Well, the thing is that Gramsci was really wondering about that. Like Gramsci really looked up at it because what he saw was not Italy, not Germany, not England, not where there was densely populated city dwelling folks. It was Russia that had its revolution. And then Gramsci was like in a fascist hellhole, in a side of a fascist prison. And he spent a really long time thinking about why is it that like the proletariat in countries like Europe and America don't revolt. And he kind of explains it really well. So that doesn't mean it'll never happen. It just happens in a different way, in that the first places of the revolution will be like Russia, China, Cuba, Venezuela. So it'll happen at the maybe end.
I know. I asked you this question before because I thought of it. I don't know if you remember, probably about 6 months ago, I asked you, do you think like US would have to be the last to go? And you said, so I remember that. Yeah. Because of just how much like we are like the hub of the
Imperialism. Yeah. And the population of the US has the most curated reality. Like, this is why, okay, if you go to Kenya and tell them that socialism's like anything PragerU says, we had Bukhara Mail a few months ago. They would laugh at you like everyone's going to be laughing at you because you cannot create a reality for them where you are relatively comfortable under capitalism because you know how it trickles down. Well, yeah. It trickles down here in the US. In Kenya, it trickles down even worse.
Yeah. But it's all, so you have, worse condition for more people or something like that.
You
don't have bad conditions here, but
you can create a reality for, like, that's why they created the suburbs. And then they created like a certain portion of the population that don't need to, that have...
I was thinking of this too, I think capitalism needed the other continent. They needed America for it to
of course
happen. And
Imperialism.
For this to be like such a hub of it. It was like because you had like the Europeans and everyone was like over here, the Europeans were all living together, but now we're kind of separate from that.
Mm-hmm.
So then that's why it's easy to make the US kind of the hub of this bullshit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not as touchable.
yeah, for a while. But it's also the opposite way in that it means like for example, the world should be this way because like 5/7 of the world live in Asia, no matter what you want to say.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't make sense that most of the commerce or whatever happens here, it should be happening there because that's where most people live. But it's hard for a lot of the American elites to grasp this, and they're kind of acting a little... I don't know how they're acting.
It's kind of, you think of it, you could think of like, what were those, the Mockingjay, the whatever those movies were, where the Hunger Games, that movie. And then you had like the Capitol by itself, and it was like impossible to get to the Capitol. Like they were kind of off on their own, and all these places had their things that they had to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like, one place had to grow the food, one place had to make the machines, whatever it was, one place had to do coal, and that was, the main part of the story.
Okay.
Wars place. So in that, like,
okay.
I see that.
Okay, so far just talking about historical materialism and what is the primary determinant force.
Yes.
Okay, so now Stalin finally answers the question. He's like a law professor almost in the way he writes with the Socratic method. So what is the chief determinant force? What is then the chief force in the complex conditions of material life of society, which determine the physiognomy of society, the character of a social system, the development of society from one system to another? This force, historical materialism holds, is the method of producing the means of life necessary for human existence, the mode of production of material values, stuff, things, clothing, footwear, fuel, instruments of which are indispensable for the life and development of society. In order to live, people must have food, clothing, shelter, water, fuel, blah, blah, blah. In order to have these material values, people must produce them. And in order to produce them, people must have the means or instruments of production with which the clothing, footwear, blah, 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 are produced. And they must be able to produce these instruments to use them. The instruments of production wherewith material values are produced, the people who operate the instrument of production and carry on the production of material values, thanks to a certain production experience and labor skill, all these elements jointly constitute the productive forces of society. So people who are involved in making things for society. Yeah, everything else is a bullshit job.
Yeah, I mean, it's all just excess.
It has. Gramsci talks about the other. It's not entirely bullshit. It has other. It's like the base and the superstructure. Like it keeps the base together. You have this superstructure that reinforces the base. The same.
Yeah.
Gramsci talks about this, but yeah, the bullshit.
I mean, personally, I think like a manager is a bullshit job. Like,
yeah, it is.
You should just be able to have, okay, this is what you need to do for the day. We need to get that, you can
get a robot now to tell you to that.
Yeah. And you just go and you do what you do, and that's that. And you don't and the overproduction of stuff. That
is total bullshit. They don't need to overproduce because they know we have such good statistical methods. We can figure out exactly who needs that.
Yeah.
Okay. But the productive forces are only one aspect of production. I just want to make sure. Stalin is not sexist. He didn't use men. He used human. Some translator translated человек to man. No, we don't appreciate these translators who do that.
Yeah.
Okay. He did not use мужчина. He used человек. So, okay. I just wanted to check because they said man here, and I'm like, Stalin wouldn't do that. Okay, I was right. But the productive forces are only one aspect of production, the only aspect of the mode of production, as an aspect that expresses the relation of people to objects and the forces of nature which they make use of for the production of material values. Another aspect of production and another aspect of the mode of production is the relation of he says humanity, человечество, to each other in the process of production, and humanity's relations of production. Yep, he definitely does not say man. Ludi, that's a blood. Okay. Okay. It's so weird that they translated человечество and люди both to man, but who cares? I mean, люди is more like people. Narod there's another word for people as a society, narod, which Spanish has that word. It's pueblo.
Yeah. Yeah.
English does not have that word.
No.
Yeah. Okay. People carry on a struggle against nature and utilize nature for production of material values, not in isolation from each other as separate individuals, but in common in groups and in societies. Productions, therefore, is at all times, under all conditions, social production. That is right. In the production of material values, people enter into mutual relations of one kind or another within production, as in like, if you're like, I don't know, let's keep it as a farmer. You could be the person that like plows the field, or you could be the person behind the farmer that like spills the seed, or you could be the person who waters the field. And those are all relationships to production. Mm-hmm. And these may be relations of cooperation, like the one I've just mentioned with the farm, mutual help between people who are free from exploitation, like I explained. These may be relations of domination and subordination. And lastly, they may be transitional from one form of relations of production to another, like the assembly line. But whatever the character of the relations of production may be, always and in every system, they constitute just an essential element of production as the productive forces of society. In production, Marx says, Marx may have used the word men, though, I don't know. Men not only act on nature, but also on one another. They produce by cooperating in a certain way, mutually exchanging their activities. In order to produce, they enter into definite connections and relations with one another, and only within these social connections and relations does their action on nature, does production take place. Marx and Engels, volume 5, page 429. Consequently, production, the mode of production, embraces both productive forces of society and people's relation of production, and thus the embodiment of their unity in the process of production of material values.
I was thinking, all right, I was thinking this, and I may be like, it may be weird, but I was thinking like in this, like talking about how things change, little changes. Mm-hmm. Like, and so that you come across this and someone 150 years ago wrote men instead of people or something like that, it wasn't right. I mean,
Stalin definitely wrote people. He says, exploitatii ludei. That's people.
Yeah. No, but you were saying that Marx might have wrote men, which I
because I don't speak German, so he might not have.
I think he did. I
don't know if he did or did not, or how German works.
I'm just saying, like, that's why, like, you are reading these, but you also have to keep that in mind. Is that okay? You might like I said, like Zinn just reading the People's History, he uses Indian instead of indigenous, and
what does he use?
He uses the term Indian for like a native indigenous American, and which they're not even Americans.
Stalin does not.
So like Zinn did that, and
that's really funny because Stalin uses the term we use now, which is First Nations.
First Nations, yeah.
He was ahead of his time. What do we say?
Yeah. That's so like that's like the moving of a language is also comes into play in all this too. Society of the moving society.
But I'm like it's kind of funny because whenever you read from you can read anything that's not Marxist. You can't read from 150 years ago because it's so racist.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure. Okay. Ludi, yep, yeah, blah, yeah, he uses Ludi people. Okay, sorry, I don't know why I better go back to reading it. Okay, the first feature of production. The first feature of production is that it never stays at one point for a long time and is always in the state of change and development, and that furthermore, changes in the mode of production inevitably call for changes in the whole social system, social ideas, political views, and institutions. They call forth the reconstruction of the whole social and political order. At different stages of development, people make use of different modes of production, and to put it more crudely, lead different manners of life. In the primitive commune, there is one mode of production. Under slavery, there's another mode of production. Under feudalism, there's a third mode of production, and so on. And correspondingly, I'm sorry, what did he use? Razni Gavari Vedut, I'm sorry.
We can assume that he probably didn't.
I know, but now I'm like curious.
No, she's gonna go.
Ludi. He used Ludi. Okay, people.
Yeah. So okay. People's social system, the spiritual life of men, their views and political institutions.
So it's so weird whoever translated it made him less woke than he was.
Yeah.
Or actually the Russian language itself is more woke. Like it's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I always feel there are a lot of languages like that. Like
Persian's also like doesn't have gendered nouns.
Have like they use people more than they use like a feminine and a masculine or something like that.
Well, yeah. I would with Persian, like it's somewhere. A lot of different languages are more naturally woke.
Yeah. So one thing I want to say after that that paragraph though is like also I think people can't like there's a point there that he's saying, okay, these modes of production, they change each time. So I think people have in their head too that the mode of production in socialism or communism is the same as in capitalism, and there's going to be it would change. Do you know what I mean? Like he's saying that you keep moving, like, but I think people have it like, oh no, but it's going to be the same as it is, so that wouldn't work. You know what I mean? And like that's
yes. There's a lot of that. Like anarchists kind of like have lacked their imagination. I see that way often where they don't realize that. Like,
but for an anarchist, that like for me to think like I would have. All right.
Okay. For example,
growing up with a bunch of anarchists, but me like doing this on my own. I would think that anarchists would actually think outside the box more.
No, exactly. Like, for example, when they think, like one thing, a Soviet dissident, you're not supposed to don't think of MLK, think of Heinrich Himmler. You know what I mean? Or the KKK. But a lot of anarchists, when they hear Soviet dissident, their imagination goes to MLK. I don't know why, as opposed to Heinrich Himmler or the KKK.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's like they fetishize dissent. So,
yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
That's it.
Once I tried to make a video about that and they got banned on TikTok for that because I'm like, what Americans would think Soviet dissident is, and I show MLK, and what Soviet dissidents really are, and I show the OUN, and I got banned for that.
I don't like that stuff on TikTok.
Okay. That means history of development of society is above all the history of the development of production, the history of the modes of production which succeed each other in the course of centuries, the history of development of productive forces and people's relations of production. Hence, the history of social development is at the same time the history of the producers of material values themselves, the history of the laboring masses who are the chief force in the process of production, who carry on the production of material values necessary for the existence of society. If historical science is to be a real science, it can no longer reduce history of social development to the actions of kings and generals and the actions to the conquerors and the subjugators of states. But above all, it must devote itself to the history of the producers of material value, the history of the laboring masses, and the history of the people.
So this comes to the fact that the history that we are taught, the history that we know always comes from
the victors.
Well, not even just the victors, but the people that are high up. Like they don't. There's not really history like coming from the workers. Like
there is, but it's not being compiled.
No, it's not
being compiled and taught in schools in the capitalist societies.
Yeah. So that's basically what he's saying there, right? Is that
that Howard
look at what the workers did, because that's where
the true history. Okay. I guess what a king does means less than figuring out for you to figure out what daily life was like. If you look at what Tsar Nikolai did, you're not going to understand it.
Yeah.
But if you look at what the slaves did or the serfs or whoever, you're going to understand it way better.
Yeah. And even the media is all written about what the Tsar did.
Oh God, they just almost, oh my God, I'm going to be indecent, but sometimes when you read the New York Times, you're like, are you guys giving him a blowjob? Tsar Nikolai. The New York Times used to call him Nick. Oh my God. Oh, yeah. At times,
loved him. They loved
him. Yeah. They called him Nick. And sometimes I wondered, is there a blowjob going?
Maybe he was giving them a lot of money.
The Tsar. Yeah, that's probably what is happening. But yeah.
The clue
to the study of history, laws of history must not be sought in the mind of people, which he says. In the views and ideas of society, but in the mode, did I miss? Practiced by society in any given historical period. It must be sought in the economic life of society. Oh, awesome. This sounds like a perfect time to promote my article.
After this episode, why don't you head on over to historically.substack.com and check out Esha's article, The Economy of Evil, and then become a paid subscriber so we can continue to bring you more content. Thanks and enjoy the rest of the show.
The prime task of historical science is to study and disclose the laws of production, laws of development of productive forces, the relations of production, and the laws of economic development of society. This means, by the way, the henses are actually this means.
Okay.
If the party of the proletariat is to be a real party, it must above all acquire a knowledge of the laws of development of production and of laws of economic development of society. This means if it is not to err in policy, the party of the proletariat must, both in drafting its program and its practical activities, proceed primarily from the laws of development of production and from the laws of economic development of society. As in, you need to look at what life is like now, look at the data, and then proceed with your program. And that's why the 5-year programs work so well, because they actually looked at facts. Joe Biden doesn't really care to change it, nothing fundamental. So he just spits out crap all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The second feature
of production.
Oh, we're not. Okay. The second feature of production is that it changes, and development always begins with changes and the development of productive forces in the first place. Changes and the development of instruments of production. Okay. I think I know. Actually, yesterday, some person asked me, she thought, what is it that Stalin allegedly did that allegedly caused a famine that Americans think?
I don't know. He ate all the wheat with a big spoon.
Yeah. Collectivization. But what they don't realize is that, before Stalin, people didn't have little squares as their, you didn't have 100 little squares as your farm. You had a lord of the manor, then you had big land, and then the serfs worked the land. The only thing Stalin did was get rid of the lord of the manor. And now, instead of having women chained up like cattle, did you see that tweet?
No.
Okay. I did the tweet where I showed the difference, where there are these women historically, where there's these women who are chained up like cattle, and they have to like plow the field like they're cattle, versus having a tractor. And how does that cause a famine? It does not. And under capitalism, your farm also collectivizes, but under Monsanto.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's an example, is that the fact that we have like more like weird fertilizers and tractors, we can grow more food within the same land. Hence, we can support like more people
until we deplete it of everything.
No, we can support a lot. No, they've found ways. I mean, there are.
Yeah, ways. I mean, I'm just talking capitalism in itself.
But there are ways to like not deplete everything and sustain everyone on this earth.
Yes.
Comfortably. Okay.
Compost.
Like there's so much. Okay.
Compost the rich.
Yeah. First, the productive forces of society change and develop. And then depending on these changes and in conformity with them, people's relation of production, their economic relations change. For example, because there were factories where you needed a lot of people squished in together in one place, you got slums.
Yeah.
Basically, and then people, instead of living in mostly rural areas, they squished together in like small. Read Upton Sinclair's It's Gross, but read it, The Jungle.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. However, this does not mean the relations of production do not influence the development of productive forces, and that the latter are not dependent on the former. While their development is dependent on the development of the productive forces, the relations of productions in their turn react upon the development of productive forces, accelerating it and retarding it. In this connection, it should be noted that the relations of production cannot for too long time lag behind and be in a state of contradiction to the growth of productive forces. Like you can't have feudalism while you have capitalism. Like it kind of dissipate, like it kind of decays away.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so what about the sharecroppers? Like, what would you say that?
That's exactly like feudalism in Russia, identical.
Yeah, but then didn't we have capitalism in kind of a feudalism?
Yeah, but we did have, for a little while.
Yeah, but it had to fade away.
Yeah, it faded away, right? To a different system.
Okay.
Like if you look at the trends, it's like literally identical to it's actually more identical to Tibet than the serfdom in Tibet than that in Russia.
Oh my God. Did you see that they are trying to make almost like remote company towns? Like you'd work remote, you'd live in their place, but you'd be not having to like go to a job. And like basically they want to have remote company towns.
That sounds psycho.
It's crazy.
If you're remote, you should be able to be in what like
and the people don't understand like what they did in company towns is the second you piss them off,
the company script,
you're out. You're out. So you have nothing. You have nothing.
Yep. That's psycho, and don't do it. Okay. I forgot where we are now.
Sorry. When are we in this connection? It should be noted. Where are we?
Can't lag behind something for too long.
Yeah.
Okay. Therefore, however much the relations of production may lag behind the development of productive forces, they must sooner or later come to correspondence with the productive forces, the character of the productive forces. Otherwise, we would have a fundamental violation of the unity of productive forces and the relations of production within the system of production, a disruption of production as a whole, and a crisis of production and the destruction of productive forces. An instance in which the relations of productions do not correspond to the character of productive forces, conflict is with them. is the economic crisis in capitalist countries where the private capitalist ownership of the means of production is in glaring incongruity with the social character of the process of production with the character of productive forces. This results in economic crisis, which leads to destruction of productive forces over and over and over and over. We're all too familiar with this. Furthermore, this incongruity itself constitutes an economic basis for social revolution, the purpose of which is to destroy the existing relations of production and create a new relation of production corresponding to the character of the productive forces, in theory. In contrast, in an instance where the productions correspond with the character of the productive forces in the socialist economy of China, where the social ownership of the means of production fully correspond to the social character of the process of production, and where because of this economic crisis and destruction of productive forces is unknown. Consequently, the productive forces are not only the most mobile and revolutionary element in production, but they're also the determining element in the development of production. Whatever the productive forces whatever are the productive forces, such must be the relations of production. While the state of the productive forces furnish the answer to the question, with what instruments of production do people produce material values they need, the state of relations of production furnishes an answer to another question. Who owns the means of production? The lands, the forests, who commands the means of production? Whether the society as a whole, or Bill Gates, or Monsanto, or classes which utilize them for exploitation of other persons, or groups or classes.
Yes.
Yeah, we know this part too well. Here's a rough picture of the development of productive forces from ancient times to our day. Transition from crude stone tools to bow and arrow, and the accompanying transition of life of hunters to domestication of animals and primitive pasturage. The transition of stone tools to metal tools, the iron axe, the wood plow, with the corresponding transition to tillage and agriculture. Further improvement of metal tools and working up the materials of the blacksmith bellows, pottery, with the corresponding development of handicraft. Separation of handicrafts from agriculture. The development of an independent handicraft this is the medieval times industry, and subsequently of manufacture. The transition from handicraft to machines, and thereby putting the independent handicraftsman out of business. So then he had to go join the factory, and that's the first proletariat you got. And the rise of the modern large-scale machine industry. Such is a general, far from complete picture of development of the productive forces of society in the course of people's history. It will be clear that the development and improvement of the instruments of production was affected by people who were related to production and not independent of them. Consequently, a change and development of instruments of production was accompanied by the change and development of people as the most important elements of productive forces. By a change and development in their production experience, their labor skill, their ability to handle the instruments of production, in conformity with the change and development of the productive forces in society in the course of history, people's relation of production, their economic relations also changed and developed. Okay. And that's kind of how we got to where we are today, I guess.
He must have got tired of writing the word production.
Yeah. Let me see. But no, it's easy. Производство. I wonder if he wrote originally in Russian or Georgian. That would be an interesting thing.
I would think that would he do Russian because it would be more.
No, originally, it doesn't matter, right? He might write it in Georgian.
Someone would have translated, yeah.
Or his accent's kind of. I'm not going to say harsh. You can tell he's a native Georgian speaker.
Yeah. So he has an accent
that a Russian might think of as harsh.
Yeah. All right. I get it.
Because there's some sound, yeah. Oh, I mean, but yeah. So Georgia.
What is Georgian? Is it? I
think it's a language like Armenian. Let me figure out. It's.
I don't know if I've ever heard it.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, it is. It's a Kartvelian language.
Okay.
It's a Caucasian language, obviously.
Okay. Yeah.
It's related to like a whole bunch of other languages that. Okay, we yeah, you've heard of it. Okay, I know where you've heard of it.
The song.
No. Hold on.
Stalin ჩემი დიდი ბაბუა დახვრიტა ბატონო. Stalin დიდი ადამიანი იყო. ო. უბრალოდ სამ დახოცამდა. შენ ბაბუას. ო. ის იქნებოდა, ხო?
When I was in the hospital, there was a nurse from Georgia. I got into a mini argument with her. She's like, he took away land. I'm like, no, you're just making it up in order to fit in with Americans, is what I said.
Well, you thought you were in Russia at first, right?
No, but I thought she'd be pro-Stalin like every normal Georgian person. And she made up some crap out, like she lied. And I'm like, you don't have to make up crap to fit in with Americans, is what I told her.
It was a freaking thing.
Yeah. I'm like, you don't make up crap to fit in with Americans. Like,
but you did think you were in Russia when you first.
Yeah. For a while. Long time. That was weird. Like, yeah, the doctor was relieved that my amnesia did not last that long.
Yeah. Well, you were on your way to do something to get your.
No, I was on the subway.
No, it was you and I were going through your paperwork.
Oh, and then I went to the subway.
So you probably had your brain on Russia.
Yeah.
Because we were doing the paperwork.
Okay, that's why I thought I was in Russia.
All right.
Okay. Where are we? The main types of relationships, the main types of relations of production. 5 main relations of production, known to history are primitive, communal, slave, feudal, capitalist, and socialist. The basis of the relations of under the primitive communal system is that the means of production are socially owned. That's right. Like when you're like a caveman, I mean, everyone has actually listen to, wait a minute. We'll use this to promote our episode with Christopher Knight.
I was talking earlier about what makes us human cognitively, and we call it intersubjectivity. It means your mind includes my mind when we're talking with each other. I know what's in your mind. I represent your thoughts in my thoughts. You represent my thoughts in your thoughts, and that's called intersubjectivity. It's very hard to do that where there's inequality. It's very hard for me to be sympathetic enough and empathetic enough with somebody who is abusing me or dominating me to be able to really internalize their thinking. I can sort of guess what they're doing in order to oppose them, but I'm not sympathetically relating to them. So what I'm saying is that the thing which makes us human, which is intersubjectivity, and there's no doubt that intersubjectivity is one of the conditions for the development of language. It works when we're equal. When we have severe inequalities, it doesn't work. But the fact that we have intersubjectivity, that our minds are designed like that, and the fact that we have language and therefore can share our dreams and thoughts and plans and memories with each other, that to me shows that we evolved under conditions of egalitarianism, gender egalitarianism, as well as social and political egalitarianism. And that in turn means that we went through a revolution, a liberating revolution. And for me, the reason why that's inspiring is because it tells us that revolution is possible. And I might sum up by simply saying, it's good to know that we won this revolution. It means that having won it once is part of who we are. and we should be able to win the revolution again.
Like, so people like were definitely social, like that's what it was.
So it's kind of interesting though. Like we like one of the stages we've gone through is communal, and then so we're going to circle back around to it.
I mean, all the stages besides capital has been communal.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, and like if you read what the article that I took from Simon Farley about the strategy of private property, this idea of private property started like after World War II. After World War One. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
For sheep. But yeah. Exactly. But it's really fascinating how like there was a definitely division of labor. Like one person kept some group of people kept the fire, and some people they had shifts. Like some would like keep at night, some would sleep. Like they had a very
even like the caregiving of children. Like
that was all communal.
Like it was all like all the kids were together.
They had these care. I mean, it was not necessarily the mother, but there were these like caregivers there. And sometimes the mother would go like hunt and gather, but so it was always it was always socialized production.
Yeah.
I want to get an astronomer to now get the history of the universe. It might be fun. So I asked the University of, but they didn't respond yet. But like that was a great episode. Okay. Okay, so we got through the stone tool. No. Bow, arrow. Okay, we got through. The basis of the slave system, and we know this, is the slave owner owns the means of production. He also owns the worker in the production, the slave whom he can sell, purchase, kill as though he were an animal. Such relations of production in the main correspond to the state of productive forces of that period, and in certain countries, this period too. And we do know which one we're talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay. Instead of stone tools, men now have metal tools. Instead of wretched primitive husbandry of the hunter, who knew neither pasturage nor tillage, now appears pasturage, tillage, handicrafts, a division of labor between the branches of production, and there appears to be exchange of products between individuals and society, and accumulation of wealth in the hands of the few by owning slaves. The accumulation of the means of production in the hands of the minority, and the possible subjugation of the majority by the minority, and the conversion of the majority into slaves. Actually, in the US, they weren't able to do conversion of the majority into slaves because like they had to keep the ratios.
Yeah. I mean, but that's how you get like, they definitely were screwing with everyone. But
they kept like
they couldn't enslave the natives because they fought back.
No, well, I mean everyone fought back. There was like
they fought back, and they had the means to fight back because they had their people right there. You know.
No.
That's why
they had to go from Africa. But even like the slaves from Africa, they like.
They fought. Yeah.
The number of people at times, like slave owners, like would never sleep. They were always worried about their slave murdering them in their sleep, and that's what I would do too. But if you had too many like slave watchers, like people who took care of the slaves, they would also murder you in your sleep and take over your plantation. So you could never trust anyone. Okay. Okay. However, there appears to be okay. Here we no longer find the common and free labor of all members of society in the production process. Here prevails the forced labor of slaves who are exploited by the non-laboring slave owners. Here, therefore, there is no common ownership of the means of production or the fruit of production. It is replaced by private ownership. The slave owner appears as the prime and principal property owner in the full sense of the term. The rich and poor, exploiters exploited, people with full rights, people with no rights, a fierce class struggle between them. Such is the picture of the slave system. The basis of the relationship under the feudal system is that the feudal lord owns the means of production and does not fully own the worker in production, in the serf. The feudal lord can no longer kill, but whom but whom he can buy and sell. Along the feudal ownership exists individual ownerships by the peasant and the handicraftsman of his implements of production and his private enterprise based on personal labor. Such relations of production in the main corresponded to the state of the production forces of that period. Further improvements of the smelting and the working of iron, the spread of the iron plow and the loom, further development of agricultural, horticultural, and dairying, and appearance of manufacture alongside handicraft workshop, such is the characteristic and the features of the productive force. The productive forces demanded that laborers shall display some kind of initiative in production and inclination for work and the feudal lord therefore discards the slave as a laborer who has no interest in work and is entirely without initiative, and prefers to deal with serfs who kind of has his own husbandry and implements of production and a certain interest in the essential cultivation of land for the payment in kind to his part of the harvest to the feudal lord. Here, private ownership is developed. Exploitation is nearly as severe as it was under slavery, only slightly mitigated. A class struggle between exploiters and exploited is the principal feature of the feudal relationship.
So basically, they gave the slave. Well, they gave the workers like, okay, you're gonna get a little bit. No. The slaves wouldn't get anything. So
no, hold on. What they would do is if you were a slave and you got freed, you had nothing, right?
Yeah.
So then this is how the kulaks developed. They're like, hey, I will rent you my plow, but this means you're going to have to give me corvée labor for 3 days a week. Or there's so many, there's atrabota, atrabochina, barshatva, whatever, thousands of different transactions. And then suddenly you can't work your own land. Then what happens is that they'll come and foreclose on your land, and then you are working for them forever. And then now for wages, that means you'll never own land. And ultimately, it turns out to be the same thing in the end.
Yeah. It's well, like my great grandfather's farm was that it was in a place that they wanted to put a smelter. So they moved him, but they gave him this land and they said that he could live on it for as long as he lived. And he did a potato farm and he grew potatoes for, like, he's up in Canada. So like McCain's and stuff like that. He was, that's what he was doing. But they owned the land. Like, he no longer owned the land because they wanted that land, his land, for the smelter. So, but he lived to 106. So,
okay. So, what happens is that this is like, so this like handicraftsman is like a very small thing, like a very short-lived period. Along basis of really is the capitalist owns the means of production and the workers, but not the workers in production, the wage laborers whom the capitalist can neither kill nor sell because they are quote unquote personally free, who are deprived of the means of production and in order to not die of hunger are obliged to sell their labor power, which is the proletariat, to the capitalist and bear the yoke of exploitation. Alongside capitalist property in the means of production, we find at first a wide scale of private property of peasant handicraftsmen in the means of production, but then they all go out of business very soon. The peasant and the no longer being served, their private property is being based on quote unquote personal labor. In the place of the handicraft workshops, manufactories appear, huge mill and factories appear equipped with machineries, and then they put out these handicraftsmen out of business. In place of manorial estates tilled by primitive implements, production of the peasant, there now appears capitalist farms along with agricultural machinery, but you still have the same exploitation. Now you have farm laborers instead of...
And the handicrafter was removed more into like an artistry, like a...
No, we don't have them. I mean...
but we kind of do because like the bougie people like buy...
Yeah, like there's 5 of them. Nothing like they did...
No, and I know what you're saying, but like that's what they kind of like just...
disappeared.
Like they made them have to go work in factories, but then when people went back to it, the only reason you could go back to it is if you have the means to make money for yourself, it's almost like an artistry instead of something that you need. So it's like serving the elite people
for their it's like
a poor person.
You're like a clown for the elite person.
Yeah.
Okay. The new requires that the workers shall be better educated, more intelligent, and that they understand mostly how to understand and how to operate the machinery. Therefore, capitalists prefer to deal with wage workers. But having developed productive forces to a tremendous extent, capitalism has enmeshed in contradictions which it is unable to solve. By producing larger and larger quantities of commodity and reducing the prices, capitalism intensifies competitions, ruins the mass of small and medium private owners, and converts them into proletariats, reduces their purchase power, with the result that it becomes impossible to dispose of the commodities produced. On the other hand, by expanding production and concentrating millions of workers in huge mills and factories, capitalism lends the process of production a social character, thus undermines its own foundation in as much as the social character of the process of production demands social ownership of the means of production. Yet the means of production remain private capitalist property, which is incompatible with the social character of the process of production. Yeah, it's kind of like how Amazon starts owning everything, and then you have you see that's what he means. Like, this is like one person will start owning more things, and then everyone else can't afford to buy whatever that one person owns. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These irreconcilable contradictions between the characters of productive forces and the relations of productions make themselves felt in periodical crisis of overproduction when the capitalists find no effective demand for their goods owing to the ruin of the mass population, like the housing crisis, which they themselves have brought down, are compelled to burn products or destroy houses or buy houses foreclosed upon them, suspend production, blah, 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 and millions of people are forced to suffer unemployment, starvation, homelessness, and so forth. Mm-hmm. We've seen this happen.
Yep,
twice, I think.
Happening daily now.
Yeah. Where I lost it.
This means that the capitalist relations of production.
This means that the capitalist relations of production have ceased to correspond with the state of productive forces of society and have come into irreconcilable contradiction with them. Yep. This means that this is the Gramsci, is pregnant with revolution, whose mission is to replace its existing capital ownership by the means of production by social ownership. This means that the main feature of the capitalist system is the most acute class struggle between the exploiters and the exploitation. The basis of the relations of production under the social system, which so far has been established in many places, only in the US, and now it's been many places. So there's China, DPRK, Venezuela, Bolivia, Cuba, Vietnam, Laos. I'm missing a few countries here and there, but whatever. Many places now. Is the social ownership of the means of production. Here, there are no longer exploiters and exploited. Goods produced are distributed to the laborer performed on the principle, he who does not work, neither shall he eat. Okay, this is a weird thing. That means like if we don't all work, like they had really good disability benefits.
Yeah, I know you get worried about me.
What? No.
I know that you'd get worried about me, like going, wait a sec.
No. It means like if you guys.
No, I understand.
By this they mean if we as a people don't produce goods, there won't be food
for everyone.
Yeah.
But like that was one of the things when Esha and I were first doing this and discussing like what I don't call myself an anarchist, but whatever it is, but like I feel like anarchism speaks more to the non-worker, and that is one of the things that people don't see. So but as Esha was saying, like, no, there is, they understand that there's the non-worker, the elderly, the disabled.
Yeah, you had a right to have, like,
you gotta take care
in
of
the Constitution of the DPRK. If you are disabled, you have a right to have disability benefits. My favorite was when the coroner had examined Otto Warmbier, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I've never seen anyone take care of, like, he apparently did not have any bed sores, which he was supposed to be having. So they rotate, like they did all the right things, and so yeah. But oddly enough, the weirdest thing is they cremated his body before they could do the autopsy.
Yeah.
Who knows? For this reason, socialist production in the USSR knows no periodical crisis that's correct, neither in China. For this reason, productive forces develop at an accelerated pace. That's why they went to space. For the relations of productions that corresponded to them offer full scope of such development. Such is the picture of development of people's relations of production in the course of history. Such is the dependence of development of relations of production on the development of productive forces and primarily on the development of the instruments of production, the dependence by virtue of which changes in development in the productive forces sooner or later lead to corresponding changes in the development of production.
So like when you're saying like the whole thing, like, okay, they went to space first. But there is that whole thing where the capitalists or the people that support capitalists, I don't know why they do, but them saying, oh no, because you can't, there wouldn't be any, people wouldn't have those thoughts. They wouldn't, like no one would go beyond or like do like, I'm not getting the word out that I want to get out, but you know what I mean? Like they
that sounds like they're projecting.
Because we have so many brands in capitalism, that must mean that we have all the thought and we have.
You have the lung cancer vaccine, even though you have like 5 brands of pharmaceuticals, but no.
Yeah, like under socialism, you can't have imagination because you're like
they have
that's like one thing.
I know. So I know, like you have like 5 brands of 10. Let's say you have 10 brands of pharmaceuticals, but no lung cancer vaccine.
Yeah, exactly. Like what it's
Cuba does
overproduction. Like why do we need like my father's?
Well, we don't have baby formula, but God knows what's being overproduced.
He worked with this man who was Russian. He was, an engineer. My father's an engineer, so this man was an engineer, and he came over here and he moved his mother over here, because he got a job over here, and this is a couple of decades ago, and his mother ends up, this is prior to, this is USSR, so the mother's like, I don't want to live here. Like she went into the grocery store, she's like, this is too much. Like, it's too much. Like, it was like, why do you need all these brands? Like, what, like, she didn't even know what to pick up because she's
it's really funny. In the 1970s, they imported some Soviet tractors and they were like, oh my God, these tractors are awesome. They last so long. Like all these farmers loved it. But then they tried, and then you realize the reason why they sanctioned Soviet tractors is because you can't actually the free market can't compete. Aww. And that's why they're crying about China, because it seems like the US can't compete in the free market it created. Aww. Like, that's why they're like so mad about China making up phones and all this high tech stuff. And I'm like, free market, the Huawei phones, they're making up bullshit about the 5G. And it's like, you are the one who's not able to compete in your own free market you made.
And anyone that I've ever talked to that has had a Huawei, why can I say it?
Huawei, I don't know, I'm putting it wrong.
Huawei.
It's a people's co-op. By the way, it's a co-op.
But they love the phone. They think the phone is great. Like they haven't had issues. It's a worker-owned co-op, so anarchists should love it too, but anarchists are racist. Like, I'm sure that the DPRK, like, you have a right to, in the Constitution, you have a right to be in a co-op. And basically, in order to have a land co-op, you just need like 6 people to sign together, like 6 people, they'll give you a co-op. Yeah, yeah.
like in the DPRK Constitution, and you're like, okay, but I'm still trying to get a hold of a Pyongyang phone because I don't know how well their phones are. They're making some sort of like cell phones that they're selling across, not in the US, but somewhere else.
Well, probably somebody from a different country could get you.
We'll have to figure out. I mean, okay, sometimes what they do is to get around sanctions is they put a made in China label.
Yeah.
China lets them do that. And it's like, okay. But South Korea, like they literally like have them make stuff. It's weird. They have a zone, economic cooperation zone, where South Korean people are like, yeah, South Korean factories, like, I don't know how to explain it.
We don't need 20 brands of something. We need good, like we need quality.
Yeah. Those kind of
quality,
stuff, like
quality.
Yeah. Those kind of stuff. There's like an economic cooperation zone that South Korea uses.
I think you're at the quote.
The use of fabrication of instruments of labor, says Mark, although existing in the germ among the species of animals, is specifically a characteristic of human labor process. Franklin therefore defines man as a tool-making animal. Relics of bygone instruments of labor process is the same importance for investigation of extinct economical forms of society as do fossil bones for the determination of extinct species of animals. It is not the articles made, but how they are made that enables to distinguish different economical epochs. Instruments of labor not only supply a standard of the degree of development to which human labor has attained, they're also the indicator of social conditions under which that labor is carried upon. And further, social relations is closely bound up with productive forces. In acquiring new productive forces, humans change their mode of production, and in changing their mode of production, changing the way of earning their living, they change all their social relation. The hand mill gives you a society with the feudal lord, the steam mill society with the industrial capitalist. There is a continual movement of growth of productive forces and of destruction of social relations, formation in ideas. The only immutable thing is the abstraction of movement. I don't know what that means, but whatever. Okay. And speaking of historical materialism as formulated by the Communist Manifesto, Engels says, economic production and the structure of society of every historical epoch necessarily arising therefrom constitute the foundation for the political and intellectual history of that epoch. Consequently, ever since the dissolution of the primeval communal ownership of land, all history has been a history of class struggles and of struggles between the exploited and the exploiting, between the dominating and dominated classes at various stages of social development. This struggle, however, has reached a new stage where the exploited and the oppressed class, the proletariat, can no longer emancipate itself from the class which exploits and oppresses it, the bourgeoisie, without at the same time forever freeing the whole of society from exploitation, oppression, and class struggles. That's actually kind of sweet. I did not. He's right.
I think the other quote was like basically just that, going back to the whole thing that nothing ever stays the same except for they're saying this abstraction of the movement. It would be the only thing that stays the same. I think that's all.
Exactly. I got it. The third feature of production is the rise of new productive forces and of the relations of production corresponding to them that does not take place separately from the old system. After the disappearance of the old system, but within the old system, it takes place not as a result of deliberate conscious activity of man, but spontaneously, unconsciously, independently of the will of man. It takes place spontaneously and independently of the will of humans for two reasons. First, because people are not free to choose one mode of production or another. Because every new generation enters life, it finds productive forces and relations of production already existing as a result of the work of former generations, owing to which it is obliged at first to accept and adapt itself to everything it finds ready-made in the sphere of production in order to be able to produce material values. Second, because when improving one instrument of production or another, one complement of the productive forces or another, people do not realize, do not understand, or reflect what social results these improvements will lead to, but only think of their everyday interests. They're lightening their labor and of securing some direct tangible advantage for themselves. When gradually and gropingly a certain number of primitive communal society passed from the use of stone tools to iron tools, they of course did not know and did not stop to reflect what social results this innovation would lead to. They did not understand or realize that the change to metal tools would mean a revolution in production, and that would in the long run lead to a slave system. They simply wanted to lighten their labor and secure an immediate tangible advantage. Their conscious activity was confined within the narrow bounds of everyday personal interest.
So that's like that's saying what we were talking about before, that there's a boom, like, so the metal things were made.
Yes.
And so you're going along and boom, and you might not know what the boom is, and then you leap forward.
Exactly.
That's what happened right there. Yeah.
Yep. When the Russian capitalists, in conjunction with the foreign capitalists, energetically implanted a modern large-scale industry in Russia while leaving Tsardom intact and turning over the peasants to the tender mercies of the landlords, they, of course, did not know and stopped to reflect what social consequence this extensive productive forces would lead to. They did not realize or understand that this big leap in the realm of productive forces of society would lead to a revolution. They simply wanted to expand industrial production to limit and gain control of the huge home market. They're conscious. Actually, this is really funny because one of the things that the lords would do is if they had peasants who were ill-behaved or who were too rebellious, they would, like, the way the army worked was that each lord had to give so many people to serve in the army. The Tsar did not care if it was this guy or his children or his slaves or whatever.
Yeah.
So these people were thinking, this guy is a rebellious peasant. And then they draft him to the army. And lo and behold, in 1918, when you have millions of rebellious peasants, they're going to go whoosh.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could kind of say that to, I don't know, they in the lore of the American Revolution that it was the rebels that came up.
But I mean, the Americans, a counter-revolution, this was a real revolution.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that, each individual lord was not thinking, hey, if everyone sends their rebellious peasants, they're going to have a whole army of rebellious peasants who'll turn their guns on us, right?
I came across an example that would be akin to nowadays that people would understand too. And of course it was the Alan Woods of Marxist. So he's the Trotsky, but he had a good example. And he said, you can think of it as you're at work and you keep accepting stuff. So your boss pisses you off, your boss pisses you off, your boss pisses you off. All of a sudden the boss does something that it's just too much. It just went over the edge, but it could be not as even bad as the first thing he did. It could just, but then that's when everyone's we're going on strike. You know what I mean? It was just you get to an edge.
Office Space.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Office Space would be perfect. It was all of a sudden there's a revolution. You know what I mean?
All these. But revolutions don't spontaneously happen. You need to plan for it, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But there will be a will, a spark.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't want to, okay.
I don't know what our spark's going to be because we've had many of them.
We haven't had enough sparks in America. Nothing.
We've had a lot of sparks.
No, we haven't. I haven't seen a single spark. Okay. However, this does not mean the changes in the transitions from the old relations of production proceed smoothly and without conflict and without upheavals. On the contrary, such a transition takes place by means of revolutionary overthrow and the old relations of production and the establishment of new production. Up to a certain period, the development of productive forces and changes in the realms of relation of production proceed spontaneously, independently from the will of men. But that is only up to a certain moment, until the new developing productive forces have reached a proper state of maturity. After the new productive state forces have matured, the existing relations of production and their upholders, the ruling class, become insuperable obstacle which can only be removed by the conscious action of the new classes, by the forcible acts, by revolution. And this is the problem with that stupid book that I can't actually review because it's so wrong, is that he wants, it's obviously to not make the Western bourgeois feel scared. And he's like, yeah, one day you can like, I don't know, have enough, you can vote for enough AOCs and you're going to have yet that ain't happening.
Yeah.
But he wants to give that illusion. So,
yeah.
So his book is awful.
Which is counter-revolution. If you're trying to like appease if you're holding back where we need to be, then you're being counter to the revolution.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, he uses the word capital as no socialist should ever use the word capitalist democracy, unless it's a sarcasm. And just fact-based, it's just wrong. Like,
just so you know, we're talking about the
same book that guy from last week.
Yeah.
Eric White.
Yes.
Blanc in French.
Blanc.
Yeah, it's like a 400-page verbal vomit that makes no sense. Like, okay, so like I can pick out facts that are wrong. Like, for example, he doesn't know how many police officers there were in Tsarist Russia. Yeah. He got that really wrong, and I don't know how you can get it that wrong. The Tsar is not hiding the ball on how many police officers he has.
No.
What else? Like, just simple things like that. Like, he doesn't understand the difference between a legal Marxist party and an illegal Marxist party, and a legal publication and so one has a seal of approval from the Tsar and you're legally printing it, and the Tsar is only giving his seal of approval to to people like him.
Exactly.
Lenin did not have a seal of approval. He had to illegally smuggle it through really complicated name. Yeah, and change his name, and everyone had to change their name.
Yep.
That's why you have Stalin, Trotsky. It's cute that in the beginning, Lenin tried to go back to his real name, but no one knew who Ulyanov was, and then he gave up.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah, it's like no one knew who Ulyanov was. So it's like but he misunderstands that. So he's like, there are 50 Marxist parties. And it's like, no, those are legal Marx. If they're showing up on the Tsarist census, they are legal parties that the Tsar approves of.
Yes.
He doesn't see, I don't know it's like he didn't want to learn about the society he's writing a book about. Then why write a book?
I don't know. It doesn't make. I don't know why you would. I don't know. I don't like. It's just rewriting what really happened, and what's the point? We have enough of that. We don't need any more.
Well, he's not rewriting what really happened. He's rewriting what his imagination thinks happened.
Well, that's what I mean. He's changing what really happened. He's just writing what he wants. I don't know. It doesn't know. If he didn't like what you and I talked about, like if he didn't cite, if he's making a statement and there's no cite on that statement, and it's not a known like that it's true, then he's making shit up.
Okay, you're right. I should just highlight that citation needed.
Yes.
And my favorite is he cites a conservative Baltic German.
Favorite.
Okay, so this conservative Baltic German was like asked by other Baltic Germans, to write like this fake history book about how the German lineage made them superior to the non-Baltic Germans who were in that area, like superior to the Russians, Lithuanians, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not a conservative Baltic German, my friend. That's what would you call that? That's a fascist Baltic German. But why does he put conservative there? It drives conservative Baltic German writer Astraf von Transe, whatever, lamented that belonged to he wrote it, and then he died in Munich. But come on, conservative Baltic German. That one's like a little bit, he should know better than that. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's so weird that like, well, who was it that who's the TYT, the majority FM woman?
Emma?
Yes. What she did last year with voting.
Wine hurts her wine. Yeah. And I'm like, she cited him about something, and I'm like, and then there's like this, I forgot, he's like really, his daughter was married to Himmler's son or something. Something like that. And then he was like, became a full-blown Nazi in about 1938.
But he had good theory. No.
Yeah, before he became a full-blown Nazi. Yeah, it's like the very first thing you Google is and
it's the same thing as you like. More than 9 out of 10. I'll give them the benefit of doubt. I'll say 1 out of 10. There's always a frigging Nazi tattoo on a frigging Ukrainian soldier that they post as some hero. I think it's more like 1 out of.
I've never seen a I always see a Nazi.
Well, they've been a couple of them. They kind of, I think they hit him well. They caught on and they just didn't show it. Like they had full sleep.
There was one where this Russian interrogator was laughing hard because he said that he only joined a month ago, and he's like,
like all the time.
Yeah. And then he just had to leave the room.
1488 was the code to get it.
That was my birthday. Oh no, date of birth. I was born on January 4th, 1988.
Yeah.
Or April 1st, April Fool's Day, 1988.
Yes, that would be more the European. Yes. Fool's Day. Okay. All right. Do you want to read just the end part?
Yeah, but I forgot where we were.
I think you're.
Tell me where I am.
I'd start with here. There stands out in bold relief.
Can you just read that? Because I don't know.
There stands out in bold relief the tremendous role of the new social ideas.
I found it now. Of the new political institutions, of the new political power, whose mission is to abolish by force the old relations of production. Out of the conflict between the new productive forces and the old relations of production, out of the new economic demands of society arise new social ideas. New ideas organized and mobilized the mass. The masses became welded into a new political army and create new revolutionary power and make use of it to abolish by force the old system of relations of power and to firmly establish the new system. The spontaneous process of development leads to a place of conscious action of people, peaceful development to violent upheaval, evolution to revolution. The proletariat, says Marx, during its contest with the bourgeoisie, is compelled by the force of circumstances to organize itself as a class by means of a revolution, making itself the ruling class, and as such, sweeps away by force the old conditions of production. The proletariat will use its political supremacy, also Marx, to wrest by degrees all capital away from the bourgeoisie and to centralize all instruments of production in the hands of the state of the proletariat, i.e. the dictatorship of the proletariat, organized as the ruling class, and to increase the total productive forces as rapidly as possible. force is the midwife of every old society pregnant with the new one. And Gramsci, apparently it's a Slavoj Žižek, like bad translation of Gramsci.
Yes.
But Gramsci says monstrous forces, not monsters. But when the old society is dying and the new cannot be born, that is when the monsters come to play. So yeah. So that means like you need to be that's like where the counter of things are the worst.
It's kind of where we're at.
Monster time for the monsters. Okay. Here is a formulation of genius of essential historical materialism given by Marx in his historic preface to his famous book, A Contribution to the Critique of he means the critique of the God system. Stalin's like a little too polite to even call it by its popular name. In the social production of life, men enter into definite relations which are indispensable and independent of their will. Actually, can you read this? This is a long one.
Yeah. Relations of production which correspond to a definite stage of development of their material productive forces. The sum total of these relations of production constitutes the economic structure of society, the real foundation on which rises a legal and political superstructure and to which corresponds definite forms of social consciousness. The mode of production of material life conditions the social, political, and intellectual life process in general. It is not the consciousness of people that determines their being, but on the contrary, their social being that determines their consciousness. At a certain stage of their development, the material productive forces of society come in conflict with the existing relations of production, or what is but a legal expression for the same thing, with the property relations within which they have been at work hitherto. From forms of development of the production forces, these relations turn into their fetters. Then begins an epoch of social revolution. With the change of the economic foundation of development of the production, with the change of economic foundation, the entire immense superstructure is more or less rapidly transformed. In considering such transformations, a distinction should always be made between the material transformation of the economic conditions of production, which can be determined with the precision of natural science, and the legal, political, religious, aesthetic, or philosophic. In short, ideological forms in which men or people become conscious of this conflict and fight it out, just as our opinion of an individual is not based on what he thinks of himself, so can we not judge of such a period of transformation by its own consciousness. On the contrary, this consciousness must be explained rather from the contradictions of material life, from the existing conflict between the social productive forces and the relations of production. No social order ever perishes before all the productive forces for which there is room in it have developed, and new higher relations of production never appear before the material conditions of their existence have matured in the womb of the old society itself. Therefore, mankind always sets itself only such tasks as it can solve, since looking at the matter more closely, it will always be found that the task itself arises only when the material conditions for the solution already exist or are at least in the process of formation. That was Marx. Such is Marxist materialism as applied to social life, to the history of society. Such are the principal features of dialectical and historical materialism. J.D. St. of Georgia.
Geographical. Yeah.
Yeah. So like basically, exactly what you were saying. We'd have to have, like, we can have that epic event, but we have to have the means to move forward from that. Like we would already have to have, like, if we're going to have a revolution, we'd have to have that planned beforehand.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Here's this funny quote that Lenin was making fun of the U.S. Congress. Legion visited the Chamber of Deputies of the United States, known as the Congress. Brought up in the police-ridden Prussian state, he was favorably impressed by the democratic customs of the Republic, and he remarks with understandable pleasure that in America, the government provides every congressman not only with a private office fitted with all modern conveniences, but also with a paid secretary to help him cope with the congressman's manifold duties.
Where's that from?
What not to be copied from the German labor movement.
Oh.
Nothing, basically. Should never copy it. It's kind of funny how he's like, he's making fun of, this is because now they have like a staff to cope with all their, it's funny. I just thought it was funny. You get bored otherwise without a little bit of Lenin, right?
Yeah. We always got to put Lenin. Well, after this, we're doing
all of Lenin.
What are we doing next week? Oh, no, wait, are you going to tell me or not tell me?
I don't know. We'll think about it.
Okay. She might.
I just thought this was funny because AOC hasn't said anything about Julian Assange.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what else? Oh, yeah. The war's being warlike, I guess.
Well, Ukraine?
Yeah.
Whatever. Biden,
I don't know what Hunter did, but why is like Biden the other day sent another billion? I'm like, where are you sending this billion? Who's getting it? No one. Like, who's getting the weapons? It's getting blown. I don't know, and I don't understand what Biden thinks.
I don't know.
Like, what did Hunter do?
Honestly, like, I hate to say it, but maybe the call that someone got impeached over was. There was actually a dog he was chasing there. You know what I mean? Like
a dog?
Well, like there was something there that it could have hurt Biden, but I don't know.
But Hunter must have done something really bad that Biden does not want to come to light.
That's all. I mean, it's if you sit there and tell your public that there's no money for us to do this stuff. I can't even give you that extra $600 that I promised. But, here I'm going to just keep sending money off to this other country.
Not money, weapons.
Well, yeah, weapons. There's some money, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, Hunter must have done something really bad there.
I don't know.
I can't think of any other reason other than to protect Hunter that Biden would be doing it. Who else would, right?
Well, I mean, like the whole thing just seems weird. Like, so Biden, like, it was almost like Biden had to get in office. Like all those people that were running in the primary, all of a sudden just started dropping out, even if they had a little bit of a push.
Pete.
Like, they would drop.
No. Obama made that call.
I know that, but that's what I'm saying. It's like Obama was saying that, but like what? Why did Biden have to win that?
I don't think they foresaw the war in Ukraine, though.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
I don't know. The 2014 was under Obama. All that stuff was going on under Obama. And then all of a sudden the war, they just keep pushing the NATO thing with Biden last year. You know what I mean? Like, and then wasn't it like December? There was a big push or something.
Oh, no. December, there was no. December was the Geneva talks with Sergei Lavrov and Anthony Blinken, where they got caught red-handed sending weapons to Ukraine. And Sergei's like, what the? Oh, bleep. And then that's when they started the war a month later in February. Because it's like, okay, these people are not going to stop and we need to Yeah.
I'm just saying, I feel like I didn't really realize the Ukrainian thing, but I did, but I didn't. And
I understand.
I didn't know enough, but I thought like the more I look into it, I'm like, if Hillary had won over Trump,
oh God,
they would have pushed that war. They would have pushed Russia into that war.
Way faster, way harder, way bigger.
That's what I'm saying. So like to say, like, I think, they wanted that. They
why? It's a war they're losing, though.
It feels like this whole. I think they thought it was gonna. I think it was. They really thought, not that they didn't. They pretty much knew Russia would win in that war. I would assume they're smart enough to realize that the.
But so how would it help them?
But no, the making it unstable.
What?
Making that region unstable, especially.
But it's not. None of that has happened yet.
But there's a war going on, so that is unstable. So the region is unstable right now.
No, there was a war going on for the last 8 years in Ukraine.
Yeah, so, but it's like the wheat, now they can't get the oil places, they can't get the wheat places, they can't do this, they can't do that.
The wheat's nonsense.
I know it's fine. I know it's fine.
Okay, wait. What is the purpose then?
It gives them background to create what they're creating, all these issues with the food production, all these issues with this, but also I think that they thought, wasn't it right before that too, that Ukraine was talking to China about the Belt and Road?
Who was talking?
What, wasn't Ukraine talking with China about the Belt?
Well, where were they?
I thought that happened.
Oh.
So I thought,
but they went really crazy. Like Kazakhstan's did they really think they were going to be able to do that with Kazakhstan?
Yeah, it was just they kept going into that region. That's why I think that they wanted this. I know
they wanted this, but what did they think they'd win with this?
I really think they thought they'd hurt Russia and or China.
How?
And they're not hurting. They're hurting all of Europe. They're hurting
Africa.
Russia seems to be doing.
China's doing better than ever.
Yeah. So I think they just.
Wait, how were they? So they wanted to hurt Russia. So they wanted this war, right?
Yeah, but they wanted to beef up like you said, the war was already going on. They wanted to beef it up and have Russia definitely jump in. You know what I mean?
But then what were they going to gain from that? That I don't understand.
Well, Russia getting hurt, they would gain that. But Russia wasn't going to get hurt.
Because Russia had planned for these sanctions for 100,000 years.
Exactly. And so they didn't understand that because they think of everything in their own, how they would do things. They don't think of how a leader of Russia would do something, or a leader of China, or a leader of.
That's why Russia waited 8 years. Russia and China don't rush into anything.
No,
it's just not in their culture. That's why they waited 8 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So. I don't know. I feel like they thought they were going to benefit from it, but I feel like what it did instead is kind of, I don't know. I think it opened up a lot more people. I don't know, because the people around the world already kind of knew, but it just gives people more ammunition to say, look, this is what the United States did all. Mm-hmm. I do hear from more European countries them actually saying things against our government that even from places that you wouldn't normally hear it. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I think that what they were trying to do was hurt Russia, and what they ended up doing was hurt a whole bunch of other people and them in our country, our government.
Okay. So then now they're stuck without a plan, and they're just trying what they know best, is sending more weapons.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That makes sense.
I mean, that could be it. I mean, there's obviously a lot of promises made. I mean, just the way that it's weird in the, I don't know, like, doesn't it feel weird the way Zelensky like begs?
Ooh.
Like it's like a full out begging. It's not like, oh, can you, like we, it's like, you got to give us this.
Because he's going to, the Azov said that he's dispensable.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying though. Like he's like, it's not a way that
he doesn't realize that Putin's doing him a big favor and he just needs to like.
He could have, at the very beginning, if
he could have realized that Putin's doing him a big favor and
he could have jumped over to Russia and been like, okay, you know what?
Yeah, kill them all.
Yes, there is an issue because he admitted the issue before. He admitted it all. It's not like he didn't know it. It's not like all of a sudden they went away because he became president.
No. He could have just done nothing and they would have killed them all. I swear, Putin's doing him a big favor by killing them all.
Yep. I don't know. It's just weird.
Oh.
So anyhow, is there anything else you want to talk about for today or?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. So let's sign off just in case we don't get into the live after.
Okay. Slobоду народу, смерти фашизму.